Let me say a couple of process things. If you're in the classroom, feel free to bring a uh, laptop or a tablet if it's easier than looking up on the screen. You could sign into our class while it's happening. You just have to make sure you mute your microphone or we'll get the feedback loop. We've been trying I've been trying some different methods of, we had a phone one time, and we had these microphones and these different microphones. Now we've got these microphones, which I think work pretty well, better than anything else I've tried. But every now and then you'll get stuck in the feedback loop, and sometimes the feedback loop is this high-pitched, whiny sound that kind of starts climbing and getting louder. Although one time we had a distance student and he was stuck in a loop, so when he talked, it would echo, 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 echo. And then he started laughing, and then he's got this big booming laugh, and then his laugh was getting stuck in the echo chamber. And then it was just really funny to him, but it sounded really spooky to us. So, um, anyways, trying to work through the technologies. Hopefully, they are working for you and not something that are making you want to destroy things. But one of the reasons you might use that while you're in the class is to just, if it was hard to read some of the things that were up there, you could put it in front of you. I just want to make sure that the technology is working for us, and that also includes those of you online, making sure that what we're doing is accessible to you, is working, you feel like you're a part of things. So every now and then we'll check in with the technology and the processes of the class. Then every now and then we'll check in just to say, how's the language learning coming along? You are learning one of the most complicated languages out there. You're learning a highly endangered language. So sometimes I just want to check in. So I guess with that, how's it going? Masayati. Tlingit to. Okay, all right. Anybody got any questions, things that we can potentially help resolve or just tangle more? Okay.
I have a question.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I was looking at the beginning Tlingit. So is there a difference between you do a sock and ye do a sock?
Great question. No. Uh, Yay do a sock is probably the one that's a little more common in what you would expect. But it's actually, I think it comes from this. There's a certain verb mode that's going to tend to have you right in front of the verb, not you as a person, but YOO. And then a K at the end of that particular verb. It means it happens repeatedly or happens regularly. Yay, do a saw would mean that is how he or she or it was named. You do a saw would be this is how it's called. He, she, or it. It is called this regularly. So you do a sock is probably technically the one that we want, but yay and you, it's totally interchangeable. It seems to not even be like a from this dialect or this village. It's just people go back and forth. I think either one's totally fine. I would probably say I probably go back and forth. I hear old time speakers using ye and you kind of interchangeably. Sometimes individuals go back and forth. So short answer is no difference. But there's only a few verbs I think that are like that, where it's like it could be this one or that one. It doesn't really matter.
Francis?
Ah,
When you just said yay do a saw, did you say yay do a saw or yay do a sock?
ye do was saw would mean that's how it was named, right? So I could say, for example, Yechat uwasak. That's how I was named by Johnny Marks, right? So that means it's a one-time thing. You were named that. But ye do a sock is that's how I'm called. They're totally related, but then the do a sock one, that KW is pretty much always on there. But the verb root of that is saw, which is to name something. Ah. Were there any other? Did you have a thought?
I'm wondering, like sometimes when I sit down to study for this class, I get a little confused on what the most effective way to study would be, because there's a lot of material, but I don't know like where to really focus my energy. So if anyone had suggestions, or if you did studying in general.
Yeah, okay. How do you guys study when you're outside of class? And that's probably the most critical time, is what do you do when you go? How do you study? What's your process? Because yeah, there's stuff everywhere, and sometimes that's helpful, and sometimes it's not. It's like, you walk in and there's 1,000 variations of things. So, anybody want to share some of your practices?
I listened on YouTube to the advanced Tlingit class just to hope that I would be able to catch some of what was going on. And I think it's just another way to listen to the language and think about the language. So that's maybe a little passive,
Okay.
but how can it hurt?
Yeah, you can listen to recorded classes. Okay, Barb?
Well, I looked up the noun dictionary online, and it's in PDF form, and I went to the land animals, and I made a list, wrote it out, I counted the letters. Some of them I don't know if I counted correctly.
Hey.
And then I studied my list.
Okay. Yeah, so you can make lists of things. So we're going to do some of that stuff. I think we said Tuesday we'll do land animals. We'll just name as many as we can. Maybe I said today. No, we'll do it Tuesday.
Tuesday, you said
Okay. I remember one time at a Tlingit language class, I was like, there were like 3 weeks left in the semester. I was like, okay, for our final, let's do all of this stuff. I think I sent out an email. I was like, let's just do all of this awesome stuff. Then I was walking from my car to my office, and I saw like 8 students walking towards me. They're like pretty angry because I gave them a bunch of extra work. So I yelled at them. I was like, "I want my lawyer." They're like, "That's too much." I was like, "All right, that's too much. We'll do less." But yeah, so making lists of things. You can always learn more nouns. That's a pretty, what's this thing called? What's that thing called? What's this thing called? And then you might find things that you need to some things you just got to work on them. Like sometimes I'll just look at something. I'll be like, I know what you're called, but I can't remember it. So, and I would say things that are around you a lot. Really focus on those things that you see. So that when you see that little guy walking across the road, you're like, chachakach. And that guy who builds, or gal, whatever, who builds the dams, segedi. And then list building, I think, is really effective. And then there's different ways you can you can work off of lists, and then you could say, how many of these can I name? And then you could just sort of test yourself and see where you're at. That's certainly one good process. Anyone else got any ideas they want to share?
Translate stuff, like get blocks of click it and then just kind of, even if it's like 3 or 4 sentences, just like go through and translate kind of as far as you can, and then look stuff up, and then I don't know if that's like studying, or it's not very directed, but like especially with the Tlingit and English books.
Yeah.
Like covering up one side and trying to get as far as I can before I peek.
Yeah, so translation could be stuff where you don't know the answer, right? Where you just got to sort of go. And that could it could be really tricky, but it's really good work. And we'll talk about some software that's out there. Jack is probably the most proficient in it in here. It's called Elon software. It's great. And then you got to kind of make sure you're doing a good job being organized with audio files and video files and stuff. But then there's also translating things that's already been translated. And that could start with, yeah, I really liked, I sat down with the mosquito story probably over a decade ago. And I just said, okay, there's the Tlingit, there's the English. Can I get there? Can I look at and understand how all of these different things work? And then another thing you can do is really pick a story or something that we happen to have the Tlingit written down, the English written down, and the audio for it or the video, because then it's something you could just listen to over and over and over and over. And it's a lot of repetition. I know repetition can get really challenging at times. But the thing is it allows your mind to really grasp the things that are going on in there. And so that when you come back to it, you'll be like, oh yeah, I want to listen for, I just want to just focus on where the verbs are. And, you know, or if you're going into the story, I want to see how all these verbs work. Do I understand how all these verbs work? And you won't get them all, but you can certainly get a lot of them. Okay, let's see. Let me see if I cut anything else. I like to record my lists and translate a day later maybe to be sure I can understand me. I mean, that's another good idea is, you know, we have phones and other devices that makes it kind of easy to record Tlingit. So maybe just try and see how many things you can say. Can you talk about the weather? Can you tell these little tiny narratives, and then maybe come back and listen to it? You know, I listen to because sometimes I make these recordings. I talk to elders, and sometimes I listen. And I'm like, I said that wrong. Now everybody's going to find out, right? But you know, it's fun to sort of see your own growth.
I don't know if this explanation will help, but the way I grew up learning it, and the reason why it's pretty easy for me to at least understand what you're saying or any of the elders are saying is every day at school for me when I was in elementary school, we just kept going through the alphabet and we just kept practicing our sounds every day that we could, whether it was morning or afternoon, and then we would look at things like chair or table and we would pick out the sounds and then we would try and practice them to make sure we got it right. And even with some of the hard ones, we didn't get that far into the hard ones, but we still tried to see if we could take out some of the sounds from the alphabet, practice those, then see if we can put it together, just to at least try and get that started. That's another way, is just because of me listening to Kone or Kingesti, David Kennedy, Ruth Demmert, Florence Shakely. I've listened to all of them throughout high school camps that I did, so just listening to any of their conversations, try and see if you can, like you said, try and see if you can translate what they're saying. But then when you can't figure out what you can't translate, then try and see if you can find it somewhere. And if not, then just ask Kone or any other translator.
And you know, if you know some of the old people, go to them. I remember we did a workshop in 2007, I think, where we came up with this idea and we recorded elders and then we made a little video game, like a little short video game. I think it's totally obsolete now. There's probably like no interface that'll work with it, but it was pretty fun. But in the afternoon, we were all writing code and stuff, and it was fun for quite a few of us. But the elders, they just sort of just moved to another part of the room, and I just noticed they were really laughing. So I was like, what? So I just, you know, and it was really fun because I could understand why they were laughing. They were telling just silly stories. One was a story, let's see, I'll try, it's a pretty short story, and then I'll translate it. And there might be parts that I get wrong. Away, just to cut your cake. Your cake away hit train. Ye has na teach. Ye away just to cut cake. Ya cake hit ye has na teach. Chuchak. Ya hit ye de has wu art. Away has to sleedy. Has to took a duck. Has our tea. Wait, ya akaksha yausati. Ye away cake costi. Taidihin aya koa. Chayuk Kone aya keusagan aya has to hiti. Ke a kausagan awa has to hiti. Chodiacheti, just the katyech aya has to waguk. Just Chadaka Kliti Sawe has out the shot, has to took a kaye has a kawati. Aga Gande has to waguk. Yawa would it a coup. Ajawa ye that Dach a cake, wush gate has would the arty. Has to took aya wush has aus nich. Wush has out to nich. Ajawa has to wasaku ausaku. Ha, ach, kliti aksha. So that story, all of the dogs, long time ago, lived inside of one house. Chashtakat Kate, all the dogs. Chog, long time ago. Kek hit, ye hasnatich. They were always in one house. Hit ye de hasbu ati. When they walked inside the house, hastu chidi hastu tuktachas awati. They would take their tail off. Hataya has shayausati. And they would hang their tail on the wall. Klaidihina yakoa. One time though, Chayuk suddenly Koneke akausakan has to hiti. Their house caught on fire. This happened really suddenly. It was really chaotic. They're running all over the place. They just grabbed any old tail off the wall and put it on their butt. This is how it's known. Because of that, now, if two dogs encounter each other, they sniff each other's butt. Because they want to know, is this my tail? And their laugh is so hard. And so I was like, that's great. And so, we want to push ourselves so we can, and we'll do some exercises like that too, where we'll just walk through, and we can walk through, and we could do little silly stories like that. We could do kind of bigger stories. We've been trying to record kind of more short, little chunky kind of stories. I'll show you this beaver and porcupine one a little later. That they're not too challenging. Everything's going to be a little bit hard. But then we're going to also learn how to use these books more and more. Into the books. So lists are something a little bit more maybe, I guess you could say, day to day. And it's like, oh yeah, what's this called? What's that called? What's that called? But then there's going to be getting into the books. And some of that is going to be looking up this verb, learning that verb, spotting verbs more and more. Or they said something, ashkut cheta, there was cheta, I don't know, oh, they're playing basketball, right? And so you'll learn what to go look up too. Because that was I remember that was a sort of mystery point for us as we would hear stuff and would say, I don't even know how to look that up. But then we learn how to spot the verb and then spot the root. And then you go look up the verb root and then everything starts to sort of reveal itself. But that's why I think the translation work is effective too. Because you've got the English right there. And you can be able to you'll be able to hit. And then I think you'll also start to learn all these little connecting words, which are really important. But then you'll start to realize what they do. And some of them, just always remember, it's not a one-for-one type of thing. The languages, English and Tlingit, work very different. So sometimes as you're translating, you're like, I don't really see, because you'll see the Downhowers do a lot of work to provide a lot of information for people. Because what Tlingit tends to do is says, okay, there's this and this, blah, blah, and then we don't reference back to any of those things for a long time. It'll just be he, she, that person, the he, she, but they'll do a lot to fill in stuff. And other things are just sort of implied. So like, yeah, of course, it's this thing we've been talking about. But when you actually translate it, you'll see it's sometimes quite different from what you see. Oh yeah, and we got, let's see. We got some walk down trails listening to the recording of that Kakasha did on traditional Tlingit plants and berries. That's great. I think we should make more little short videos with some of our speakers just on harvesting practices so that we can, and then we can also make these kind of prepare ourselves to take the language into these new realms, right? That's another process. Okay, I'm going to go pick berries. Let me get all the different things that I could. And one time we're at immersion camp in Tlingit, out at Chilkoot. And we all went to pick berries, and I was kind of done after a couple hours. You know, I was with some hardcore ladies, and they're like, you know, we're here till the sun goes down. So they just pick, 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 pick. Well, suddenly they start really laughing, and so as I walked over, I was like, I need to know what's so funny because I love funny things. And they were just sort of getting these phrases, and like just the way the phrases were lining up, it was like they were just trying to see like it was just berry picking phrases, but sometimes the timing of it was like touch it, is it hard, pull on it, you know, it's just like oh, and they just started laughing, and then we call it like the naughty book and stuff. But you can get a series of phrases together for a particular activity. Go in, especially if you have like a language partner that you're learning with, or you know, just some friends or some activities. We have some spaces on campus we can make available. It's always wonderful to just get the language in the community, meet at a coffee shop and work on stuff. But that way you could say, okay, let's get together and work on berry picking phrases, and then let's go berry picking and see what, and then we'll realize what we don't know how to say, and then we'll come back and figure out how to say those things, because then it's language in use in an environment. And I think that also helps to really push the language in, because then you're doing the physical activity and you're also thinking about how the verbs and everything works. Let's see. Coach Yedi, if you can see this, it's saying you're not part of the meeting, you're using the Zoom app. Okay, so hopefully everybody's in, or we're helping people get in if they need to get into the class. Memes, we do lots, I do memes, I think they're fun, just little funny kind of things with language. iTunes. There's been talk, I think KTOO is interested in doing a radio show, or at least parts of it in Tlingit. In Hawaii, they did a lot of this. They'd do a little section, I don't know how they started it, but they would do a section every now and then, maybe it was daily or weekly, where they would do the news in Hawaiian. I think that'd be really neat. I think it'd be really neat to have maybe a 30-minute radio show at some point where we're just talking about what's going on, do a few language lessons, listen to a little recording, give out all the good secrets. Like if we're talking on distant Tlingit, we don't translate. We're like, I found some salmon berries. Everybody go over here. Don't tell, you know. I don't know. We make it like there's got to be some real benefits to this. But yeah, so we were also talking about a podcast and some other things. And one of the things that I was talking about with the class, I think this was last night, is in my talks with KTOO, when people approach me with ideas, I get really excited, but then I say, you guys need to create a job for somebody who does that. You need a language, and we need language people in all these different industries, because they're on a Tlingit anikakawe has achawe Tlingit yukatangi achtuasakuadat yehaschu. They're on Tlingit land, so I want them to have Tlingit in their workplace. And this is all part of the big normalization process, and it could be partnerships and stuff like that, but it'd be great if there was the audio, video, radio person who's familiar with the language, and they could just help get some of these projects going so that they could do some of the editing and scheduling and stuff and help it get on the air. We've got a Word of the Week project that I started too long ago. I've got to get out there. Where I took these 52 words that I felt were pretty important, arranged them to what I felt were seasons, so you're hitting herring eggs in late March and early April and stuff. And then we went to about 6 different speakers maybe, and we just say, think of a sentence for each of these words. And so we got a bunch of different sentences about a bunch of these different things. So we'll have to put that out there too.
This summer, because I worked with the culture council in the summertime, and I had the older group this year to where I only had 5 kids, which was kind of nice, but I helped them each learn their Tlingit introduction, which also helped me because I had mine, but I added more onto it. And then once I get it down, I add a little bit more to it. But I like that I worked with the kids and they learned, and they got up in front of because we had a potluck at the end of the camp, so they all said their introductions to their parents and their grandparents.
Nice.
But I felt that, because I used it at the camps and I use it, or when I help out at the other camps and I help with them, it's like and notice when I use it more, I remember it. But if I don't use it, it disappears.
Yeah, so that's the other thing too, is realizing that if there's certain things that you used to know how to say, figuring out how to retain those, and some of it could be going back in with specific sort of strategies, and some of it is, especially as it's such an interesting world because sometimes like people would say, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm practicing my Tlingit. That's why I'm talking to myself like everywhere I go because you have to actually make the noises and engage, and sometimes you have to go and make that community, and sometimes it's just yourself, sometimes it's just you and someone else. It's always great to start teaching other people because then you push yourself and you also help just sort of spread the zombie cure, but also just sort of making some commitments. We're going to take this further than how are you doing? And you and I are studying Tlingit. When I see you, that's if I start learning Hawaiian, then I'd see these people. I'm like, oh man, because I'm like, okay, they're gonna talk to me in Hawaiian. Okay, but it was awesome. It was great because that's just the way they do it. Is they expect you to at some point stop with and to the point where they were with their teachers and we were in classes with them. And at one point they were like, so weird to talk to you in English. That's what they say to their teacher, right? Because they're just, by the end of year 2, they're done. They are done with English. And so that's what we're trying to do is push ourselves too, so that by next semester we're doing 50-50, right? And we're just sort of pushing ourselves into that world. Because otherwise we just sort of hang out on the edge of the pool and, you can't learn to swim if you're just always on the edge of the pool, I think.
Can you talk about why the more you repeat it, the better you remember it?
Yeah, well, I think repetition just sort of, it pushes it, and then also slight variation so that it's not always just the same, but it's starting to sort of realize that this is just becoming part of me. And I think, like one time I saw somebody stand up and talk, and this was when I was just getting to the point where I could actually just sort of sustain the language for a while and say some things that weren't, because we start with memorization, and then we start memorizing bigger and bigger chunks and putting them together. But then at some point we realize, like, I'm running out of room for these chunks, and I don't know how to move this to do something different. And that's where we start to sort of push ourselves into understanding the structure of the language and then trying to build this whole sort of network within ourselves. But I remember I saw Nakashan, he gave a speech, and it was really fun to dance with the Marks Trail because Nora, she would never tell you what was, we'd be like, what are we going to do? She's like, we're going to sing. I'm like, what are we going to sing? Oh, just whatever. I'm like, okay, and we get up there, she's like, we're going to sing this. And we're like, we don't practice that one, But she just had like a million songs in her head, and then she'd say, Akatlan's going to give you a speech. And then you'd walk up, and so you knew that she was probably going to call on you. You never knew exactly when. And so I remember he was talking, and he was giving this great speech, and then he got done, and it was celebration, so of course you speak Tlingit, you translate. And so he spoke, and he said, I forgot what I said. And I laughed, right? We all laughed. But then later I thought, that's getting to this level of fluency where you're not, eventually you get to a point where you're constructing these ideas through your English brain and then translating it over. But then at some point you're just saying, okay, English brain, we're going with Tlingit brain today. And then you're able to just sort of switch over to this other sort of more natural flow. But I think in the meantime, you're building, as in Hawaii, they said, we learn and use an artificial language in the classroom. And we're fine with that. Some people get mad. They'll say, it doesn't sound like my grandpa, and it doesn't sound like this. And he says, we've come to terms with that. That to teach someone a language as a second language, you don't just start, right? And then, but we can get them there. And that's what they believe. They said, we can get them there where you give us someone for 3 years. If they're in our intensive program, they'll speak Hawaiian and they'll sound Hawaiian. And so those are some things I think about when I think about repetition. And sometimes it gets, you got to have a variety of things because you're going to get kind of bored with this thing or tired or disappointed, and then you move on to another thing. But then those things have to always kind of be there.
Can I say something about
Yeah.
the more you repeat, the better you remember? As I understand it, I hope somebody else knows more than I do. I'm going to talk about the brain. Concepts in our brain are travel along strings, right? The neurons. And they did some kind of experiment with guys looking at pictures of whatever, and one of them was some actress. It was the same actress, I don't know who it was. But every time they showed that picture, and they could see whatever they were using to look inside the brain. Every time they showed that picture, the same exact one neuron of that person's brain lit up. So as if that concept is stored right there. But what I want to say about repetition is that every time we access a memory, we fire that neuron, chemical, electrical signal goes through there. And around that neuron is built up a thicker and thicker layer of, I want to say mylar, but it's not mylar.
Yeah.
It's
Something
like that word, but it's fat. Okay, and so the thicker that fat layer gets around that neuron, the faster it'll fire, and the more readily it'll fire. So repetition helps. Another thing that helps is if you learn that word in a charged atmosphere, like it's so funny and you're just laughing, and somehow that emotional juice has to do with that's whatever that is sticks in your head better.
Okay.
One thing they found out is that in terms of the brain, when you learn other languages, the synapses grow exponentially to the nth power. It's not a doubling or the tripling, it's an exponent.
Okay.
So second language does so much for the brain. Doesn't matter which languages, the more languages you learn, the more synapses, which are the connections between the neurons in your brain.
Okay.
And it's exponential growth.
Yeah, Yauch says myelin or myelin?
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Goodness, cheese. And
This is close.
what is this? Who's the scholar that does the decolonization of the mind? He presented at the Alaska Native Studies Conference. I want to say Michael Yellowbird. And he talked about this. He's a neuroscientist, and he talks about this. He says, when you learn an indigenous language, you are literally burning these new pathways into your brain. And that's the science of it, is you have to form these new pathways. And I think that's why sometimes when we start getting into some words and concepts and stuff, it just seems kind of abnormal sometimes, or it just really challenges your brain. But yeah, hey, I love talking about this stuff. I also love practicing Tlingit. So now we're going to shift gears, and we're going to just finish our sound chart. And we're going to start walking through beginning Tlingit at a bit of a trot. Let me share the screen. And we'll have these conversations now and then. So if you have other thoughts, or you feel like you had things that you didn't get to say, make sure that you either just say them, you type them, and I'll say them for you, or just, if you're online, you're never interrupting. If you're in the class, you're never interrupting. And if we got a guest speaker, let them talk. But if it's me and you got a thought, let's hear the thought, right? Okay, so we finished off with this guy. Ah,
Ta,
ah,
ta,
kla,
ta,
kla,
ta,
kleishe,
kleise,
kleishe.
kleise.
This one I have very little confidence about, because kleislu, I've heard it long. Kleislu, I've heard it that way with no T at the beginning. I've heard pretty strong arguments that it's not a moth, it's a butterfly. I've heard pretty strong arguments that it's not a butterfly, it's a moth. So I found kind of a butterfly-looking moth. And then I just put kleislu, but there are other ways you're going to hear this word. There's at times going to be interpretations. There are two other names for butterfly that I know of, and one other name for moth. Kadakedi, which is mold on a man's coffin or on a person's coffin, which is a super cool name. And then Kadashechi, which is dancing around people. So those are both butterflies. And then Atcha is, I think it's Atchaat is the other name for moth, which is food something, eat something. That one's pretty tricky to translate. Ah, ah, e,
Lee,
e,
lee,
e.
lee.
That one is garbage. That word is garbage. There's a related word, e. So you just change the TL apostrophe to an S apostrophe, and that's like dirt or some kind of dust. It comes up a lot in that Yesh Kakia Shkashnig, the Raven and Daylight story, where that girl, she keeps seeing, there's something floating, some dirt or something that's floating. Is more specifically like rubbish. They're related. Sa, sa,
Ah,
sa.
ah.
Kushtal Koish has my favorite Sa story, well, at least one of them. Years ago, people spotted like a little Sa Yeti across the bay, and they noticed that its mother wasn't there, and they watched it, and they're like, where's the mom? Where's the mom? So they called like Fish and Game or something, and so I think there's this seal pup over there that got abandoned maybe, or something happened. And so they came over and they rescued it and they brought it to health. And then they said, let's go find an elder so we could give it a Tlingit name. And so they went to see Kushtal Koish, Phil Fawcett, who told them it has a Tlingit name. Sa Yeti. You want to give it a cute name, call it Flipper. Just that was the neatest part of the story. But on that note, like in English, it would be a pup, and then a little baby whale would be like a calf, and a baby Sheep would be a lamb, and et cetera, et cetera. They're all just yeti. Just throw yeti at the end. You get kitten, puppy, kits, caboodle, whatever they are. Right? Tsatsi,
Satsi,
tsatsi,
satsi,
tsatsi.
satsi.
And that's kind of generally any bird could be tsatsi. Then there's a bunch of specific names for a whole bunch of birds. It's is another way that it's you could say like a little bird. I think kind of probably smaller than a hand maybe could be tsitsk. Tsatsi. It just means little bird. So now we'll go to the what Qashahishti Roy Mitchell refers to as the pizza burning zone. And there's a number of sounds here, including, when you're in the front of the mouth, the L and the pinched L and the TL, pinched TL, those are probably the trickiest sounds. Here there's going to be some of the K and X sounds. Nothing that goes, none of that business in this region, right? So this is one of the things like hoots. We have those. But then there's these other things, hoots, and I don't know what those are, but I keep hearing about them, right? And so just keeping an eye on that sort of sound. So we start with ya,
Yeah.
yak,
Yeah.
yak.
Yak,
Those are muscles. Ga,
ga,
gooch,
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 a hill. Ka,
ka,
cost,
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 ka,
ka, ka,
incheyi,
kincheyi,
incheyi.
kincheyi.
The other thing that tends to happen is if you have some sort of pinched consonant, like the next one tends to come like incheyi, or the one that's probably challenging for me is nutsk, and not to go nutsk with the real hard K at the end as well, which is 3. Ha,
Ka,
ha.
ka,
So this sound, as Dashjini has said, it's the cappuccino maker. Or it's also like if you're a storyteller on the radio, it was a windy night. That's this exact sound. So it's not the sound, okay? Khasha,
kasha,
khasha.
kasha,
So if that double A thing means the one that does the thing, and then the verb root is usually right before it, what would hush be?
Cut.
To cut or to saw. Ah,
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 ah.
ah.
This is a really good sound to practice, right? And so I like to just go, and sometimes I'll do like, just to make it interesting. But this is one that's really good to practice. And luckily we have and which have them on either at the front and the end of the word, right? This is also one of a few words that the name was given to English for whatever reason. I think pre-colonial times, was a crabapple. And now crabapple is Tlingit. Another one is a chicken. That used to be a female grouse. But now female grouse is Tlingit Tlingit chicken. Right? Potato, kunz. Tlingit kunzi is the root of swamp hemlock, maybe. But don't go eating it because I think those are poisonous.
I don't understand what you just said.
Okay.
Crab apples used to be ah.
Yeah, so like for before contact. Crab apples were conch, grouse were conch. The little flour with the Tlingit rice is kuch, and then that little root was kuntz. For whatever reason, those names became, and shuk was the little wild strawberries. So now the shuk is the big strawberries in the store, and Tlingit shuk is the wild strawberry. For some, there's only like 5 of them, where I think some transition happened, and now the grouse becomes Tlingit chicken. Or it should be that that should be Tlingit. That should be white man's grouse. But I can't change it. Okay, so the difference between the TL and the L. So the TL, so we have TL apostrophe, which would be ah, ah. The L apostrophe would be ah, 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 ah. And when you get the L apostrophe, you're going to hear different speakers say it differently. Like I noticed some of them would go like, there'd be like this kind of squishy, crunchy sound that comes out. Like let's say, uknach ati. But you want to make sure you're not going uknach ati, because that's the other sound. Uknach ati. Like a lot of the speakers I hear, it's a pretty subtle, doesn't come off like really hard and edgy. So you've got the TL, the L, they are very similar. Very, luckily there's not a whole lot of words that are like, uh-oh, you said this thing, right? That happens. And we talk about like laughing. And I had a student and he liked to come in and just write a phrase on the board before class started. And I'd come in, I'd look at it. And he'd translate things from English to Tlingit, and it was a lot of fun for him. And then one time I think he wanted to put like, I've been to the top of a mountain, a very tall mountain, but Shah with a low tone is mountain, and Shah with a high tone is women. And so I was like, what are you trying to say? and luckily, like he was, because some people, if they get laughed at, it's just devastating. We don't want to hurt anybody, right? But he just had a lot of fun, and he erased those right away. He's like, that's not what I was trying to say at all. Okay. So now we'll sort of do something a little different once we hit like one of those hard sounds. And we'll just look at like different ways to respond to and to say, how are you doing? There's 2 general ways to say it, depending on whether you're from, we call it H-ka Tlingit, or you say H-ka Tlingit, H-ka Tlingit,
H-ka Tlingit,
H-ka Tlingit,
H-ka Tlingit,
Dak-ka Tlingit,
Dak-ka Tlingit,
Dak-ka Tlingit.
Dak-ka Tlingit.
And what are those 2 things?
Coastal and inland.
Yeah, coastal Tlingit, inland Tlingit, right? So here we'll say wasa, but especially in Tesla, they'll say masa, right? So it's easy to learn it's easy to use both of them, right? So everybody say wasa iyati,
Wasa iyati,
masa iyati,
masa iyati,
wasa iyati,
wasa iyati,
masa iyati.
masa iyati.
So we keep in mind that we're not going wasa iyati. Right? We're not doing the English question, doing them in Tlingit. So wasa iyati is how are you doing, right? But I think in Tlingit you can have lots of answers. When they're teaching us Hawaiian, they say, when we say pahea oi, you say mai kai. That's all. It's just saying hello. We're not really trying to figure out how you're doing, right? So they say, how are you? And you say, good. Right? But I don't think Tlingit's like that, right? But then there's I kind of got these into 3 categories. I'm doing good. non-answers and smart alecky kind of answers, which are totally acceptable. And then, I'm not doing that great. And so the first ones, and we always just, we're not trying to bring any hurtful, negative energies. If we're practicing sickness, we don't want to get sick. We're just learning how to say this stuff. Because I was in a workshop where I was like, okay, well, we always say chet yak e or tashwasa. What if there's something more? And we were trying to harvest some answers from speakers. And one of them, he was getting pretty upset. He says, I don't like to talk about negative things because it's going to happen. Like he's a really old school Tlingit. He doesn't like to put bears into stories at all because we're not supposed to talk about them, and especially if you're going to laugh at it. He says, don't ever laugh at animals. Right?
My uncle would say, don't call trouble. You're calling trouble.
Right. Exactly. But we also want to learn how to say these things because sometimes situations happen. And we need to be able to say, I'm sad. That way we can have conversations, right? And so, but we do like to say there are cultural components to learning Tlingit. And some of them are, if you go and do a bunch of stuff and you keep saying something, it's going to, keep saying the name of that big guy in the woods, he's coming. He'll just come, right? And then there's some variations. There's different ways to say these things. But the simple, straight way, so someone says, how are you doing? You could say, yak a,
Yak a,
yak a,
yak a,
yak a.
yak a,
You could also say, chat yak a,
yak a,
chat yak a.
yak a.
So yak a means good. So as you're becoming on your journey to become a Tlingit speaker, you don't have to say cool, awesome, great, fantastic. You could say yak a. They'll get what you're saying, right? And it's just, start substituting things even to people who don't speak Tlingit. We're not forcing anything on anybody, but we're just sort of saying, oh yeah, we could just use that one. And it helps, When I first started working at UAS, I wrote a letter to somebody who works here, like for a student, on behalf of a student, and I signed it, Gunash Chish, or as an email, and then I put my name under it, and I got the email. I said, Dear Gunash Chish. Say my name, everybody, so on. That's good, right? And that could also be, just on its own, yak a is he, she, or it is good, right? So this could, like you see something neat, yak a. Somebody tells you something good, yak a, right? That is good. That's good. Okay. So then I feel good. Ach tu wu yak a.
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 There's the ach tu wu. Ach is my. Tu wu is, that's a complicated one to translate. I would say thoughts, emotions, feelings, intentions, desires, spirit, all of those things are encompassed by this word tu wu. It kind of literally means inside of me, right? There's other kind of variations, like I'd work with these two elders and I'd say, how would you say this? And then one would say it, and if they weren't really sure, they'd turn to the other one and say, Dasa itu wuch. And Dasa itu wuch means, what do you think? How do you feel? Right? If we're in a group and someone says, where do you want to eat? Canton Hidi. Dasa itu wuch pa. I want to go to Canton House. Oh, what do you want though? Right? And then I feel happy. Sigu is happy. Ach tu wu sigu.
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 And then a good sort of, and this one, well, we'll learn how to say it and then I'll talk about what it means. And there's the short way to say it. Keshwasa.
Klefwasa.
Keshwasa.
Klefwasa.
And the longer, more sort of proper way. Keshwasa uti.
Tlingit.
Keshwasa-uti.
Tlingit.
So this one is really interesting because it's a negative form of a verb. And the literal translation would be, that's not how it is. That's not really how it works. It really means fine. Fine. Right? For example, if we're walking and somebody fell down, and I might say, "Yekega, are you okay?" And I'd say, "Keshwasa-chatuti, I'm fine." The other way that this is used is if people, let's say something's going on and we're all just having fun and we're teasing, and I tease somebody too much and I could see I hurt their feelings. I say, forgive me. And they'll say, Keshwasa-uti, it's fine, it's okay. It's used in a lot of different ways, and you'll see it in some different forms. It could also, like, Keshwasa-ikwati, you're going to be okay. Nothing bad's going to happen to you. But when you answer like wasa-iyati, and you say keshwasa-oti, keshwasa-chat-uti, keshwasa, you just say, fine, I'm fine, I'm okay.
Are you gonna explain why it's a negative wasa? Or is that something we can learn later in the grammar boat?
Yati is the verb.
Okay.
Kesh-uti is the negative form of that particular verb. So when a verb goes negative, it changes quite a bit. Yati, kesh-uti. So you could say, gleit yachyati. This is white in color. Yachyati is how you talk about color. Kesh-uch yach-uti. This is not black. Uti. Yati, uti. And we'll talk about what happens when verbs go negative, right?
So then, keshwasa uti, is that saying I'm fine?
I'm fine.
And then it's still the same thing even as written that way?
Yeah, so the chet would just go right there. Like that would be, keshwasa chet uti would be a very proper way to say that phrase.
And you're just at least responding to them saying that I'm fine specifically.
Yes.
You can say it either way.
Yeah, and you can say keshwasa. It's a little slangy to say keshwasa, but lots of elders, they talk like that.
So, is it like, not bad? So that's it's
Literally means not like that. But this is one phrase where like you can't look at it literally. You just have to accept that that means fine.
but fine is the same as not bad.
Because you could say not bad.
People have told me that's what it means.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, and it depends on what you're responding to, right? And English does the same thing, but it does a lot with tone, right? Great is not the same as great, right? But Tlingit doesn't use sarcasm like that. It doesn't have like sarcastic tone. But it does have certain things where like in that context, that's how that thing works. Okay, we'll go through these others and we'll take a break. The chet goes right in between sa and uti because it's an object pronoun, so it's got to go really close to the verb. Another great answer. I like to be a smart aleck. That's how I was taught. That's how I was raised. Chachataya. 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 I'm just me. It's a great answer. That's how Kasech, Selena Everson, she answers that. She'll tell you that a lot. Chushugu. 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 The same. That's how Johnny Marks used to like to answer this question. Certain people, I think, and he'd also say Yisikuush, which is like, if you only knew, then he'd really laugh. Go to negative town before our break. Keshushke.
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 So, yak-a is good. Keshushke is actually the polar opposite of that. and it means terrible, awful, evil, horrible. And now you could say all of those things. You could just push those other English words out and just say kech ushke. So this is a different one because the verb actually changes because the classifier changes, and we'll talk about that later. But kech ushke, you can also say that when something awful happens, or you hear some bad news, or there was. We'll do these two, then I'll tell you a quick story, then we'll take a break. And this one is, I feel emotionally terrible. Kech ach tu wu ushke. Kech ach tu wu ushke. So by now you should start noticing this kech thing. It means not. And so it'll push any verb negative. It'll push a verb negative. To know it, to not know it, right? And then I am unhappy. Like you could say not happy, but this means unhappy, like the polar opposite. Kech ach tushke. Kech ach tushke. We don't want to end on a negative note. So there was someone who was in a distance class with me, and then, I might tell stories about things that happened, but I won't put your name to it. Although there have been times I tell people that like, that was me, I just want you all to know. He's talking about me. Right? But there was someone who was in a distance class, and we'd just do all this, we'd do lots of practice. And then I saw this person, and I said, "How what's us face to face?" It was great. And this person said, they wanted to say kech ushke. So you see that U right there? If you change that accidentally, and this person said kech ishke. So instead of ushke, ishke. Kech ishke, which means you are awful. I got really concerned because sometimes like it's like
In person.
it's just like, like I just get nervous about stuff like that. One time I was at a meeting, and it was at Tlingit and as a delegate, and we're doing all this hard work, and someone turns to me and she says, "Do you have a mother?" And I just thought, "What have I done?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Did you get her a Mother's Day present? You want to buy this thing?" I was like, "Oh, good grief, I'll buy whatever." And anyways, it was just a mistake, and we worked it out later. But I was really worried that I had kind of messed up. So, on that note, Kechat Ushke, like Michael Jackson. Let's take 10. We'll come back, and we'll look at saying hellos and goodbyes. Go back into sound practice. Nashish.
That would be super fantastic.
Goes. So there's a couple of questions here that were online. One was someone asked, how do you say history? Which is that's a neat question. Because the history is shagun. So there's a number of different words in Tlingit that the meaning changes depending on how it's being used. And there's some of them, like, we'll get into possessive pronouns, like ach is my, I is your, du is his or her, ha is our. So that the our pronoun also is very powerful because ha ani, that doesn't just mean like you and I own this land. Like that usually means like the land of our clan, of our people. Hashish kohas. That could literally mean you and I are grandparents. But in most contexts, that means our ancestors. Shagun. So a lot of times in the newer dictionaries, you'll see this long dash before a word. What that means is that word cannot appear on its own. It has to belong to something. So in previous dictionaries, they would write this as a shagun. And this is always something we would just kind of debate about, because if you look up a lot of things in the Orange Dictionary by nation story, and say dutla, duyadi, duish, akate, and that's actually something that can be substituted. And so for this one, shagun, like if I could say, yagucha shagun, the history of this cup. Maybe I'm going to tell you who gave it to me or where it comes from. Maybe I'm going to tell you how it was put together. Shagun could also mean the parts that make up something. Like if I had another Tlingit teacher ask me for a boom box, I was like, boom box? This is the 2010s. But like if I had a boom box and I took it all apart, that would be a shagun. It's parts. Shagun means our ancestors, but it could also mean our history. It depends on the context. I'm going to tell you about the history of the Shukach Adi clan. Ach Shagun would usually refer to my family tree. Right? And I just talk, and this is how people talk to each other too. Conversational Tlingit. Who are you? Where are you from? Who's your people? Those are big things. So that's how Shagun works. And I had a couple other, so Shagun, right, would generally be
So
history.
when you're saying ach shagun, does it squish in with that word, or just
It's its own pronoun.
it's its own? But shagun can't appear all by itself.
No, it needs to belong to something.
Does it always get possessed? Shagun.
No.
It's just
Yeah, so there's certain words that they need to belong to something, so they don't get a possessive suffix because they just, like body parts. That's a really good example. This is achjin, ijin, dujin, kajin, hajin. But if somebody, we don't want this to happen, if my hand got cut off, or if somebody's hand got cut off, I should just draw pictures so that happens to Mr. Bill or whatever. Then you'd say jinni. Now it gets a possessive suffix. That means it's been removed and it's probably not coming back. So this is why hoots, because it's been taken out. Hoots, with, that might be the last tooth you ever look at, but
It's not attached to there.
But so if it gets removed, it gets a possessive suffix. And so there's some different rules we're going to learn, and this is the intermediate Tlingit part, is we learn how this stuff works. And the fun part is you already know how to apply some of these rules, but when you learn a language from birth, you don't have to, unless you're like a real grammar person, you're not really like, try the indefinite article, son, right? Just sort of, it's a little bit more organic, right?
So, achgweithli.
Yes, achgweithli. Yes, my bad. Achjin. Yeah, because it's just there. So kinship terms, body parts, and then there's a whole set of terms as well. Achshagun, right? It doesn't get that possessive marker on there. And we'll get to that possessive stuff. Now let's see. What does H and N mean? Okay, so there's also a lot of symbols involved with, as you start getting into more advanced Tlingit. We're trying to figure out the shorthand way to document a bunch of stuff. And Tlingit has a bunch of stuff that English doesn't have. Just like English has a bunch of stuff that Tlingit doesn't have. It's not a big deal. Some people like to make languages seem really mysterious. It's like, nah, it's just a language. It's just the logic works differently. So Tlingit has third person. So first person is me. Second person is you that I'm talking to. Third person is this person we're talking about. And we're praising them. But then the Tlingit has third person human, third person non-human. So when we write 3H, that's third person human, 3N, third person non-human. And that would, I'm not, maybe for you, your dog is a person. I'm totally fine with that, right? If I'm talking about my cat, I'll probably say duh instead of would be it. Its thing, right? Let's see. Photo from in the library. Okay, yeah, I think that was it. And then or oh, for the shagun, it's a single A. Shagun. Okay. Okay, good questions. So here's a handful of things you could say when you see people coming and going. This is a big part of language. And it's different. Like one time I was at a ku'ik in Tuck on aya ku'ik a yausahi. Gan kawe chwadnuk. Ka chwasatin kechne. Hit yi wugud. Hit neil uwugud. We de de chuni. The Tlingit saya katchat se wug ak. Klekak enach Margaret Stevens, gwalli. Wushu has at Tlingit enach. Kelly has yaw ka Wasa ied klekt. Yad de chun yuch a tunk. A kawe kechne. Dekwagu. Ha. Hooch. So I was at a ku'ik in Cluckwan, and I watched Nora Dowenhauer walk in. And she walked up to, I think her name was Margaret Stevens, and they both spoke Tlingit, and they sat and they were happy to see each other. And I listened to them because I was learning. And they didn't say, "How are you doing? Good to see you." They just sat down and started talking about stuff. I was like, whoa. And then they talked for and they're laughing, and then Nora just said, "I'm going." And she said, "All right." That was it, right? So, but it's fine to bring the formalities of English in. I think it's fine. It helps people. The other thing is, like, if we're going to talk Tlingit on the phone, Zayagan. Once I say Zayagan, I'm hanging up, right? Because that's the other thing is, okay, bye, right? So you need these cues, right? And there's Father Michael Alexa would talk about this because he married an Alaska Native woman. He said sometimes, like, people would start to wind down a conversation, like, "All right, well, we're going to get going," and then sometimes in English-speaking conversations with Gleitcha, like maybe you're going to leave 20 minutes from now, right? You're just going to hang out and kind of wind it down. It's like, "All right, well, we're going to take off," and then his wife would just get up and walk out the door. So this first one, you should recognize this first word. What does this first word translate to, or how do you interpret it?
Hungry.
Good. So we'll say yak-a.
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 Ilchsatini.
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 Ilchsatini. So we're going to talk about a couple of things here. First of all is, can anybody interpret that for us? Yak-a ilchsatini.
That I see you.
Yeah, it's good that I've seen you. It's good to see you. And let's say the whole thing a few times. Yak-a ilchsatini.
Yak-a ilchsatini.
Yak-a ilchsatini.
Yak-a ilchsatini.
Yak-a ilchsatini.
Yak-a ilchsatini.
So something to keep in mind with Tlingit, contraction happens in the front of a verb. That's where a lot of, there's other places, but that's the number one spot where it's going to happen. So there's some different components that you have in here. You have I, you have you have cha, you have sa, you have teen, and you have I. So you have 6 syllables that go down to ich, sa, teen, ni. So 2 syllables got to go. So the part that people tend to have a little bit of a tricky time with is with this W. So the first part goes ich, ich, satini.
Satini.
So a lot of people want to put another syllable in there, right? They'll say yak-a satini, or they'll just try and force that other syllable to go in there. But it's ilsa.
Ilchsa.
Ilsa.
Ilchsa.
Ilsa.
Ilchsa.
Ilsa.
Ilchsa.
So ilsitin is I saw you or I see you. It could be either one, right? There's no true sort of present tense, the way the English works, form of this. because I can't say it because it's you. You're the specific thing. If I've seen that specific thing, it must have already happened. So it's good to see you. Another thing you could say, wa'e'akwa,
Aqua,
wa'e'akwa,
aqua,
wa'e'akwa, wa'e'akwa.
aqua.
Can somebody interpret that for us? Not really, what about you? Is that you? Right? And so it was pretty fun because I was at the Alaska Native Medical Center in Anchorage, and they've got a really cool sign. Here's how you say hello in Alaska's native languages. And what's on there for Tlingit? Wa'e'ekwe. And that's not really hello. Like, that's kind of you're being kind of cheeky when you say, usually when I hear people say that, like they see you, they know who you are. But maybe, like, is that you? Like, I was hoping it was you or something. Because usually when the old people would ask me this, when we see each other, they'd be laughing. And I would say, chachataya Yesu. Yeah, I'm still me. Or I'd say, hechosaku. I don't know, right? Just to kind of be silly, right? But wa'e'akwe, is that you? Suhakatke wa'a. Suhakatke wa'a. This can also be said with two A's. Suhakake wa'a. So this su is again, hakat or haka, on us, kewa'a, the day broke, it dawned. It has dawned on us again, like literally. Not like the English phrase, like it suddenly dawned on me. Like literally day broke on us. Like this is, and it's a really fun phrase. This is something that Kakasha taught us in Yakutat. And she said this is something the old people would say when they saw each other a lot. Is it has, the day broke on us again. Right?
What was the variation on cut?
Ka, K, high tone A, A.
Are both those variations from Florence on that?
I think she likes to say ka. I can't remember which one she prefers. Okay, so then it's time to go. You're talking to one person. Suye ikwasatin. Suye ikwasatin. Suye ikwasatin. So here's kind of a tone police thing. It's like a lot of people will say "tsuye ikwasatin," or sometimes they'll say "tsuye ikwasatin." I'm like, there's some funny tone in there. "Tsuye ikwasatin," or it's like "tsuye ikwasatin," because Tlingit has tone built into the language, right? Because I think what you're getting there is a little bit of a "see you later." Tsuye ikwasatin. So this is a future form of this exact verb, right? Without the I on the end, which we'll talk about later. Su is again. If it comes before the verb and it's low tone, it means again. Suyeyanaka, say it again, right? Su'achin kananik, tell me again. Su, and then ye ikwasatin is a verb that means I will see you. It's a future form. I am going to see you. So this literally means I am going to see you again.
The tone changes on that teen.
Yeah, so it goes up. In all future forms, the tone is going to want to be long and high for positive future forms of the verb. And this is something, when we get to a verb, there's going to be like changing it for person. I'm doing it to you. You're doing it to me. There's going to be changing it for mode. It's happening. It will happen. It did happen. It won't happen. And when we start changing the verb like that, and that's really the two ways you're going to change it. Who's it happening to? Who's doing it? And just the sort of communicating about events and time and stuff like that. But what's going to happen is that verb root, teen, which is to see, is it's going to start going, it's going to be either teen high, teen low, or tin, short and high. And there's a set of rules. Tlingit, like we just got like this, there's this huge book of rules, and then there's this huge book of exceptions. It's like the Tlingit language Bible. It's like, tonight we'll read from the book of exceptions, right? Audagon, let's see. Oh, Ziyag and Kachish. What did you want me to write out? What did I say? Did I say something that I didn't write? That's not on here?
I can't remember how to say it now, but shoot, it was something that you said Kal Kashat taught you.
Oh, Tsu Hakat Kewa'a. It was that one down there.
Yeah.
And then,
I need to make that bigger. Sorry. Thank you.
So Tsuye ik Kwasatin. I will see you, one person, later. And, so I was with a group of people, and they're learning Tlingit, and so I was just teasing, but they walked away from a group of us, and they turned, they said, Ich sechan. And I said, which one? Because it better be me, right? Because you could say, Yich sechan. I love all of you all, right? And it's just having fun, But so this is just one person. Like, I will see you, and that's the I. That's that one person, right? And as we get into these verbs more, we'll learn how to say you, y'all, me, and how to change that. Because really, there's just a list of things that you're going to learn how to use, right? So then I was with, oops, let me fix that. I was at a ko'ik, and there were some guys there, and they all spoke Tlingit, and I was visiting with them, and I said, Tsuye yik kwasatin. I'll see y'all later. But then I was kind of given a better phrase by Kenny Grant, who said this one, which is, we'll see each other again. And then when he was like, oh, we'll see each other. Wow, that's great. And he says, because next time you see me, I might be dead. I was like, whoa, jeez. But this one, so you get the whoosh in front of it, which means to each other. That's what whoosh means. Whoosh or whoosh. They're kind of interchangeable. There's probably some style reason why people choose one or the other. Whoosh in and whoosh tin are the same thing. They mean the same thing. They might be used a little differently, but they mean the same thing. Whooshegach to steen.
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 We will see each other. Right?
And is that singular again?
No, that's all of us.
So it could be more than just you and me. It could be.
Yeah, so there's a ch right here, which is me, I'm doing it, and that changes to tu when we are doing it. Okay, so that tusteen, we're gonna see, we'll all see each other again. Is one way you might translate that. Although the again part isn't really on there.
That's the classifier.
And the S is the classifier.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So that translates to we will see each other again? Or-
Not again. You could say tsu wushegach tustin. But I was taught just wushegach tustin, which means we'll see each other. You don't really need the again part.
Is that, it's like an intention, is that hortative because it's an intention? Like
It's just future.
Just future.
It's just future. It doesn't mean let us or It's not a command form. It's just saying it's going to happen.
We'll have lunch.
Exactly, just like that, right? We'll do this again, right? And so the classifier does go from sa to the letter S because the whoosh is going to change the classifier to what we call plus D, which means we're doing this to ourselves. We're seeing ourselves. And we'll talk about that later too, like what does that mean? But that's why it would go from si to zi and sa to s. Right?
Did you say the S changed to the sa changed to, oh, I see.
Just to an S, right? So we see sa, S. But it's because the whoosh is in there. Whenever the whoosh or the chush is to myself, whoosh is to each other, it's going to change that classifier a little bit. Okay, so the last one's the easiest, which is just kind of slang, but I know older people who say this too. And this literally means later, like ziyagen hundake hiti degachtuat. Later, we're going to go to the store. But it's also a good way to just say, and I have a grandma, and I was talking to her on the phone. I was like, okay, Auntie. I call her Auntie. It's like, we'll talk to you later. She's like, later. And then she hung up the phone. It's like, but this works like that. Ziyagen.
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 And then Audegon says, came upon me. Well, like tsuha katkewa, it's like it dawned. I was saying it's not like the English phrase, and then it dawned on me. There would be other ways to sort of say something like that. So, but we're just going to move on to sounds. So now we'll introduce like the G and the W with this area and the W, what we call rounded. Gwa. Gwasha. Gwasha. So that is a dagger. So what is gwash? So that's a verb root. To stab. But it's also to punch or to beat a drum, right? So, and it could be in some cases the same verb, right? So you could say, if you made a sentence in Tlingit, it would be like, I banged a drum, and then I punched him, and then I stabbed him. So it would actually kind of, one would probably change. If you punch him in the face, it would be a little bit different. But they would actually kind of be the same verb. So it'd be like, wait, what? Because you're going to go to jail. Kwa. On Quayi.
On Quayi.
On Quayi.
On Quayi.
So we talked about this guasha, sheta, chasha. This is a compound where it's just a couple words that just get put together. So on is land, usually like occupied land. Quay is a marker. So on Quayi, land marker. Each is a reef or a rock that pokes out of the water that the sea lions like to live on. So the name for a buoy is each Quayi, reef marker. Right, so that's how a lot of this stuff works in Tlingit, is just parts that you add up to create some meaning. And then there's the KW and the XW. They're a little different when they're at the end of a word. So instead of going kwa, you're going to go ak, yak, yak. And then there's also some interesting things, like there's these words that I used to teach, like meaning a certain thing, because I was told like yak is a canoe, but it's also a boat. But then I went inland and I said, no, when we say yak, we mean a boat, not a canoe. I was like, oh, okay. So these are just little things, they're things that you'll learn, is that the language functions different in different places. Kwa.
Kwa.
Quat.
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 Ak. Zisk.
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 Zisk. Zisk. And there are some communities where zisk is tsisk, and tsisk is zisk. So the voiced one, zisk, is a moose for most speakers, although Kwakwan tends to prefer tsisk. But in a lot of other communities, tsisk with the TS is an owl with the tufts. More fun stuff. Hua, huasta, huasta. So in the inland as well, they like to really talk about like hit is a tent, means fabric house. Hit is a wall tent because it's got that thick canvas. Right, so there's also, some variation like that. So that's just a duck. But then there's all these different names for all these different kinds of ducks as well. Hun. Z. Okay. So now we get back to the nuti, the swallower. So this is that guy that I practice with every night while I'm snoring, because I snore like really loud. I wake myself up. So this one, if you're going to pretend to drink water, you make the sound that goes, look. That's what this sound is. And if those of you who want to learn how to speak Haida, their underlined G is like ha. So it's deeper. It's like my Haida teacher, Julie Coburn, she would like crunch into herself when she'd make that sound. So it's not that deep, but it's right there. Coach. That's a basket. A tail. A tail. Ha. Hot. Nemo ish. So this is another one. Like I used to say, hot means salmon. When you say hot, Tlingit people will think of salmon. And I taught in the interior, and they say, no, we'll think of a trout. It's like, oh, okay, I'll put Nemo's dad in there. On. So now adding the W sounds in there. Oina. So there's the double A, but this one's a little tricky because there's certain verb roots that are. One thing we talk about is whether words are open or closed. Do we know what that means? It's open or closed.
The consonant at the end?
Yes, it has a consonant at the end. Like Hawaiian, they don't like to have closed words. So if your name is Bill, they'll call you Pila. They'll put a vowel on the end because there just has to be one on the end. I think it's fine having either one. But a verb root that is open, when it closes, it'll sometimes change its shape. And this is one of them. So you say guena, but the verb root is gu. And gu means to wipe or mop something. And so it's the one that wipes. And then you can add, it's kind of fun because there's little things you could put on the front of that. Just like a verb, you could put a hand on the front and you get jaquena. And that's a hand towel. And you could put a mouth in front of it and you get jaquena. And that's a napkin. And you could put a nose on the front of it and you get tlequina, which is tissue. And then sometimes, like tlequina, for some of the old people, would mean a handkerchief. And then tlequina, paper handkerchief, or what technically paper nose wiper, would be a tissue. But we tried tuqwina, but then some of the elders said, no, we call that tuqacheta, which is toilet paper. And then they always laugh when they say that. I think it was a stick a long time ago.
That's what I was gonna ask. Does that extend? But
Yep. So tuq. But then you'll see that sometimes you can do that directly to a word, and you can also do that directly to a verb. A verb can take these things on. So j can go in front of a verb, and it's referring to hands. Could go in front of a verb, and it refers to a mouth. Like you'll hear people say, "You katangi," means language. "You tutungi" would be thought. Tu, inside, mouth. Okay.
What's the verb to what?
Qu, awshiqu.
How do you spell that?
Here, I'll just put it on here.
oh, you were talking about ye and you being variously interchangeable. Could you say ye chatangi or ye
No,
chutangi?
only in the duosak one. That's one where it just slides back and forth a little bit. But good question. And that might be low tone though. I'll have to check it later. Okay. Let's race to the end. Kwa,
Kwa,
kwan,
kwan,
kwan.
kwan.
So you see that long dash there? That means it has to belong to something, and there's usually a place name right in front of it. The people of that place. Ak, nak, nak, kwa,
Kwa,
kwak,
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 kwak.
ak,
Ak,
clek,
clek,
clek.
clek.
So again, you got that W at the end, so you're doing this little breath out at the end. Khwa,
Kwa,
shanakhwayi,
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 shanakhwayi.
hunt,
Hunch,
hunt.
hunch.
And that is the older brother of a male. Khwa,
Kwa,
khwat,
kwat,
khwat,
kwat,
khwat.
kwat.
So that's another good one to practice. And then at the end, akh,
Ak,
nekh,
nech,
nekh.
nech.
Then you go into the throat. There's only two sounds there. That's what that one sounds like. Yana 8.
Yana eight,
Yana 8.
yana eight.
Hit.
Hit,
Hit.
hit,
Hit.
hit.
Okay. Okay. That's all the sounds. You should tuck night touch. Everybody clap your hands. So next week we'll probably review these sounds again, but we'll probably just go through them kind of fast, just say them each once, just so it's just part of how we kind of warm up. And then we'll look at some other things like interjections are really fun. Like these are things you say like, holy cow, oh my, geez, that's what you get. Those types of things. 1 minute left. Okay.
Instead of clapping, should we be going like that?
Yeah, so we could do that. I gotta remember is the verb root to stomp your feet. But, yeah. Okay. Okay. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you. Dech wush yegach tusti. Equati.
I'm out next. Next week.
Yeah, can yeah. So, and if you ever are traveling, you can watch the classes. They get posted later. Yeah, and you can also call in. So yeah.
the instructions on it?
Yeah, so